Hey guys, you may have noticed I remade this video. Over the last few weeks, I've invested in some higher quality equipment and software, plus my editing skills are continually improving as I get more comfortable making videos. I also rushed this case to get content out, and I really want to do it justice because I don't believe you guys deserved rushed content. So this isn't just a remake to improve quality, but it also has a lot more information and more context with better flow. I will always endeavor to do better for you guys. Thank you for your support, and here's the case. Good afternoon and welcome to True Crime Mysteries, where we take a dive into some of the world's most prolific crimes. Today, we'll be discussing the case, trial, and conviction of one of Canada's most notorious killers, Robert Willie Pickton. His case and subsequent trial had been particularly unsettling to me because his killing grounds were close to my hometown. He is thought to have killed upwards of 49 people and was convicted of 27. The manner in which he disposed of their bodies was also horrific. For a long time, it was something a lot of people talked about often. You just never think this kind of thing happens in your backyard. But now, the farm that once was the scene of many people's horrific end has now been paved over and is a strip mall. The world moves on, but for the victims, we should continue talking. It also serves as a reminder to a younger generation that hasn't been told to be careful, because bad people can lurk in the most inconspicuous of places. Robert Pickton, who preferred to be called Willie, was born October 24, 1949 in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. Little is known about his childhood or family background, but it is reported that his father was absent in his childhood and he was raised by his mother, Louise Pickton. She was described as a workaholic who was tough and had eccentric tendencies in raising her children. She would work her children for long hours on the pig farm, even on school days, but it was the 1950s and that wasn't entirely unusual for a smaller farming community. There is a story that Robert, as a child, had a pet calf who he had raised from birth. He loved this calf and he felt it was his only companion. His parents had had the calf slaughtered once it was big enough, and he never recovered from that grief and betrayal. Robert did not do well in school. He had been put into special education classes and eventually dropped out. He was described as having personal hygiene issues as a child and into adulthood. He smelled of manure, body odor, and dead animals. He didn't have a lot of friends, but the ones he had would beg him to bathe, but he had a visceral fear of showers due to his mother hosing him down like a dog as a child. He would only take baths. Robert did not date in school or after. In his entire life, he had never had a girlfriend. Women were said to be repulsed by him due to the smell and his creepy demeanor. He was awkward, he had an off-putting sense of humor, and he unsettled people. He would spend most of his life in isolation. When both of his parents had passed, Pickton and his siblings sold off most of the family pig farm to urban development, reducing the farm to 6.5 hectares. After the reduction, they still maintained a small-scale livestock operation. Pickton lived on the property in a small trailer home. In 1996, he and his brother established the Piggy Palace Good Times Society, which they registered federally as a charity that had an alleged mandate to raise funds for service organizations through special events such as dances and shows. The society would host massive parties. Neighbors complained of the rowdiness, drug use, drunkenness, and noise from parties attended by as many as 1,700 people. Frequent guests of these parties were members of the Hells Angels, as well as many sex trade workers from the downtown east side. The surrounding community was not happy with what appeared to be a tax-evading loophole to hold unsavory, days-on-end gatherings, and in 2000, the city of Port Coquitlam disbanded the charity due to the brothers failing to report their financial statements. I wanted to interject for a minute and set the scene for the victims. For decades leading up to Pickton being caught and all the way to this year, women were and are still going missing. Women in high-risk positions, such as drug users, sex workers, and runaways, are vulnerable, and the late 80s and 90s were a particularly scary time because the increasing frequency women were going missing and no one could figure out where they were going. Women would try to protect themselves by walking in groups, taking down license plate numbers of vehicles, but women just kept going missing, and because of the transient nature of the victims, the police did very little to investigate. The Canadian RCMP did create a special team to investigate the disappearances, but the team was disbanded in 1989 due to limited progress. In 1991, Family of Missing Women and advocates for sex trade workers established an annual Valentine's Day Remembrance Walk as a memorial to murdered and missing victims. The people of British Columbia wanted answers, and the police were sluggish to respond, and at this point there were no bodies, so to police, these were just missing women who could have up and left. As we know now, they didn't. In 1997, Pickton had actually been arrested for kidnapping and stabbing a sex trade worker. She later testified she had been picked up by Pickton, he had taken her back to his property, and he had attempted to handcuff her. She was stabbed in the abdomen when she resisted being handcuffed, and she managed to wrestle the knife from him and ended up stabbing him back. Then she was able to run to a road, wave down an oncoming vehicle, and receive treatment at the hospital. Pickton called an ambulance and received treatment at the same hospital, and he was later arrested there. He was charged with attempted murder, assault with a weapon, and forcible confinement, but the charges were stayed and eventually dropped because the woman, whose name was placed under the protection of the publication ban by the courts, was a drug addict and not considered to be a competent witness. Pickton claimed she was just a hitchhiker who had attacked him, and he was released from prison. The police had a second opportunity to arrest Pickton had they taken this next tip seriously. In the spring of 1999, an employee of the farm told the Vancouver police that a sex trade worker and drug addict named Lynn Ellingson had seen a woman's body hanging in Pickton's slaughterhouse. When questioned by police, Ellingson initially denied the story. Only much later did she admit that on March 22nd, she had in fact seen the body, but didn't report it because she was afraid of Pickton and also depended on him for money for drugs. This report had not been investigated by police, despite Pickton consenting for police to search the property. It is estimated that had the police gone to the farm, it could have saved at least 10 lives. Around this year, there had been a significant spike as Pickton got more confident with killing and barely bothered hiding any potential evidence. An employee of the farm, Bill Hiscox, described the property as creepy and described Pickton as exhibiting bizarre behavior that would draw negative attention to himself. He had made several connections to women he had seen on the property and women that had gone missing in the area. In '99, he informed the RCMP that several items of women's clothing, purses, and identification had been seen on the property. He believed these items belonged to several missing women, and this was the second time Hiscox had contacted the police regarding these suspicions, and police did not obtain a warrant based on what they considered hearsay evidence. They told Hiscox they required an eyewitness or physical evidence. So to recap, by '99, police had an incident where a sex worker escaped an attack on the Pickton property, a claim of a dead body being seen hanging in a slaughterhouse, and an employee who had made 2 claims seeing the personal effects of known missing women. Plus, well over 50 women having gone completely missing in about a 20-year period. These would later haunt the Vancouver Police Department because it was one of their greatest embarrassments as a police force. It really shone a light on the discrimination shown by the Vancouver Police and the RCMP. Had it been another demographic of women, it would likely have never gone this far. It shouldn't matter how you make a living, the color of your skin, or whatever walk of life you come from. We should all be treated equally, especially in the eyes of our justice system. No one should be forgotten, and it really is mind-blowing how long Robert Pickton got away with murder. In 2002, a different former employee named Scott Chubb said that he had personally seen illegal guns on the property, and the RCMP were then able to execute a search warrant looking for illegal guns. And on February 5th, in addition to finding several unregistered and illegal weapons, they found items connecting missing women to the property. This then began the massive investigation that was seemingly never ending. DNA profiles of both men and women were found. They never found complete bodies, only bone fragments, teeth, hair, small bones, jaw fragments, pieces of larger bones. Police believed he was grinding up his victims and feeding them to his pigs. Forensic analyst was challenging due to the level of degrade and decomposition of the fragments and the sheer volume of the fragments, each fragment needing to be identified via DNA and sorted. They would only be able to positively identify 27 victims. There were many more than likely. There was just not enough DNA on a fragment to test, or they didn't have DNA to compare. Families of missing women were encouraged to give DNA in order to make a familial connection, but not all of the victims had blood relatives in the area. They would spend 21 months excavating the farm. While Pickton was in jail, unbeknownst to him, he was joined in his cell by an undercover police officer. Police needed Pickton to give them any information possible to help with the identification process. So, an officer was charged with befriending Pickton and to gain his trust. Pickton liked the attention. He referred to himself as a celebrity and was happy to boast to his cellmate. He revealed details about keeping victims' belongings, including their driver's licenses, clothing, on the farm. With that information, officers were able to identify dozens of victims. Additionally, he said to the officer, "I got a murder charge on me and 48 more. 48 more to come. Whoopee." Pickton told the undercover officer he had wanted to make it an even 50 and had only got caught because he was sloppy. It was believed he did murder 49 people. There was no reason to doubt that claim. However, Pickton would only end up facing 27 counts of murder, most of whom were either drug addicts or prostitutes. The Crown decided to try him initially for 6 murders that had the most definitive evidence so that there was a higher chance of the conviction sticking. On December 9th, 2007, the jury returned with a guilty verdict of 6 counts of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced Pickton to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years, and he was later charged with the remaining 21 counts of murder. And despite several appeals, Pickton will likely spend the remainder of his life in a maximum security prison. He is eligible for parole on February 22nd, 2027. He would be 78 years old by then. Unfortunately, Pickton could have been apprehended much sooner. The Vancouver Police Department acknowledged this in a statement during a press conference. Unfortunately, there are many victims still unidentified. 22 potential victims left anonymous. I hope that with advances in technology or with a confession, all the families of the victims will one day get closure. But for now, this is the end of this case. And if you like the content, please support the channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. And if you want to stay updated on what case I'm working on currently, please follow my socials. Links are in the description box below. Thank you all, and have a good day.